It's a book about why a relationship broke, really. Hi, welcome to Book Up. If you're new here, my name is Nell, and I am a pleasure reader who likes to read literary fiction, fantasy, historical fiction, all sorts of things, as long as they help me see the world in new ways and learn about new perspectives. Today, I'm going to review Sorrow and Bliss by Meg Mason. Meg Mason is an Australian author who this is her third book. And she was published in 2012 and again in 2017, and this is 2020. I know I said that this book is about how a relationship breaks. For me, the big exploration was loneliness and how we can set up our own inner monologue in order to separate ourselves from the people around us and the people we love. The central character, Martha, is... I really liked her. Everyone says she's not super likable, but maybe she's me. I don't know. Maybe I'm that abrasive. That's probably true, actually. I really felt her loneliness in this novel. I thought that the writing was exceptionally evocative when it came to giving physical descriptions of an emotive state. I felt the exploration of like an unnamed mental illness or neurodivergence. I just want to point out, everyone assumes that all of Martha's struggles come from some form of made up mental illness, but they could equally be from some version of neurodivergence. A lot of her difficulties center around communication and perception and things that sort of fall into either camp. So when she is feeling these things and struggling with what she perceives as her own failings, she builds up this system of denial and detachment that is trying to protect herself ultimately from what she thinks she inevitably deserves, which is to be abandoned alone. And that system eventually creates like a self-fulfilling prophecy. I really loved all of the characters in this book. I really loved her parents. I really felt like that niche description of sort of mid-level artistic academics who hang out and stroke each other's egos but never quite make enough headway in the mainstream to make actual money. I know those people and I love them. So it was really enjoyable to see those people on the page. The character development, the exploration of this quite singular theme. It is very focused on this one woman's relationship with humans in the world, and how she copes or does not cope with her various life stages and how that reflects on her physical and mental well-being, but also on her relationships. It's really very focused on that central construct. So if you're not interested in an exploration of that in the context of a heterosexual marriage, then don't read the book. If you are, this book is awesome. It's very well crafted as a piece. It has achieved its aim, and I thought it was thoroughly enjoyable. Martha and her sister are so funny. Everyone talks about the humor first. I thought it was a really touching book, and I actually spent a lot of my time in my feels, but there is so much laughter throughout that it sort of breaks it up and makes sure that you don't get stuck in your feels and you don't... It's really interesting when someone can take bleak humor and make you laugh without disrupting or lifting you, so that you are still in that pit. I know so many depressive people who are like super funny, and just because they made you laugh doesn't mean they feel any better. And I think that this book was really good at mimicking that. Yeah, I think this was wonderful. It's one of Scott's books, top books of the year, and I think it will be one of mine. Read it. Okay. Um, from like a feminist perspective, the relationships between men and women are set up on this actually a much more ableist power dynamic. Um, the Martha is definitely a broken woman and seen as needing care and infantilized a little bit by the men she has relationships with. Um, but I think there's probably a feminist intersection there if you wanted to examine it through that lens. I just don't think this book really leans towards that. That doesn't mean it doesn't exist, because everything is in the context of the patriarchy we live in. The power dynamic between the main character's mother and father was really interesting, because definitely the mother is the more dominant character. The more, but she's also represented as being like selfish, flat out selfish, as is the central character. There is the idea that maybe if these were gender flipped, there would not be such a narrative of selfishness and failure to accommodate the feelings and needs of your partner. However, there is very bad behavior. These characters are not fairy floss and candy women. That are being lectured for having needs and desires. So what I'm saying is a shades of grey statement. I definitely read the book differently to Scott. He felt that it was very clearly the protagonist's. If blame was laid, that it was very clearly in the protagonist behaved much worse than the husband. In this exploration of a broken relationship, and I don't entirely agree with that. I think that when you're in a relationship with someone who has a mental illness or a neurodivergence, you have to understand that their behavior is a different thing. It is not behaving badly to behave within the symptoms of your illness. It's not, someone who's got a broken leg isn't being obstinate when they don't want to go for a run with you. When someone is sad, that's actually not about you, it's about them. I think that there is a desire in the interpretation of this to see the central character as somehow wallowing and somehow being responsible for her illness and her unwellness. And that's a bit shit. She does do some very horrible things once medicated, that are supposed to be in a clear-cut way, not because of the illness. But I've had the experience of being in quite close friendships with mentally ill people, and just because they're medicated doesn't mean they're symptom-free, and just because they're medicated doesn't mean they're not emotionally dealing with the consequences of a diagnosis, or emotionally dealing with the consequences of what they've done before they were medicated. This is not an on and off switch, and I've definitely found it interesting, people's responses to Martha and her behaviour. I think it demonstrates that stigma is not the real problem with mental illness in our society. I think that on the surface, we no longer see it as a shameful thing to simply be mentally ill. But I do think that there is an amount of ableism that expects people to pull themselves up by their bootstraps, or only be mentally ill for periods and not for their entire life, or only be mentally ill in ways that don't inconvenience you personally. I think that the idea that someone who has difficulty understanding the difference between reality and fantasy, and who has a destructive element to their inner workings that really is very hurtful to themselves. Expecting them to behave like nice, kind, emotionally appropriate people 100% of the time. I mean, expecting anyone to behave like that is stupid. It's stupid. We all have bad days. We all make bad decisions. We all do bad things. And to judge someone as a bad person or at fault of the breakdown of a relationship because of a bad action is wrong. The breakdown of a relationship only ever happens because both people agree to give up. Or one person decides to give up and the other decides not to be a stalker. But at all times it can be repaired. All it requires is the desire to, the ability to forgive and empathize, and the true understanding that things like this can continue to happen and people will hurt each other's feelings, and your partner or your sister or your friend is not required to never hurt you in order to have a relationship with you. It's just not how it works. Yeah, I have feelings, thoughts, and emotions about this book. I'd be really interested in anyone else who thinks that Martha is less horrible, because I don't know. I don't think she's that mean. She says mean things sometimes, and she's ill. I feel like I've talked around in a circle, so I'm just gonna say, tell me what you think in your comments. We'll continue the conversation. Read Sorrow and Bliss. Thanks for watching. Like and subscribe. Okay, bye.